I was walking down in the Dublin town, just passing by the Spar.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. So we had an NDP leadership election. It was going on for most of the month of March, but you had the final results published earlier today, or yeah, earlier today. Since I'm thinking I upload this video same day, it's irrelevant if you're seeing this later. Um, but Avi Lewis won decisive, I wouldn't say. Lewis won 56%, which wasn't phenomenal. He got about 40,000 votes, if I remember correctly. Heather McPherson, who is an NDP MP, won about 20,000 votes, and some assorted candidates got lower. Rob Ashton had a massive fall from grace. Rob Aston. Let me see if they have the overall um, results here. I'm not sure. Oh, that's cute. He hugged Heather McPherson. That's adorable. But you saw, yeah, Navi Lewis got about 39,000. Um, and he will replace, I think, immediately Don Davies as NDP leader. Don Davies was a good leader for the NDP. Like, you wouldn't see it based on the fact that they're at 4 seats right now. But he was a pretty good leader, in my opinion. Um, in case you're wondering, those 4 seats come from they're losing Nunavut, though, to be fair. Nunavut had already flipped, I guess if you want to call it liberal. Lori Lau crossed the floor to the Liberals. So if you consider that a flip, I mean, you know, um, it's a flip in MP, or the MP obviously switched parties. But if you consider that a flip to the Liberals, or just like, a change within party membership, because technically the people of Nunavut didn't vote for it, though a lot of them did vote Liberal, and Liberals would be polling to win it nonetheless. You can consider it so. And also in British Columbia, the NDP one is nowhere near picking up the seat they narrow. What the fuck is happening? Okay, they're nowhere near picking up New Westminster, Burnaby, Maillardville, which they narrowly lost in a three-way race. In 2025, and Davies himself is polling to lose a seat, though he won by point 0.6 last time. That's expected. And then Jenny Kwan is also polling to lose her seat. That's not real, and that's bullshit. I can just say that here. But it's at least somewhat interesting. So the NDP has collapsed there. That's pretty much it. McPherson's going to win easily. Her only main competition is the Conservatives, and the Conservatives are in no place to contest anything. They're at a whopping 36%, 10% behind the Liberals. Like, look what happened to Ontario. Conservatives nearly won Milton East. Conservatives nearly won Hamilton Mountain, and now look at it. Now look at it. It exploded. Jamil Javani's polling to lose by 5. Like, how did this happen? Well, actually, how this happened was for a while. Let me see if I can get to it. Um, for a while, you actually saw a pretty close race. The LPC and CPC were pretty much tied. The bloc was polling well. 7% is pretty good, and in a lot of polls, they're polling higher. Plus, with the Liberals collapsing in Quebec, it was shaping up to be a pretty good result for the bloc if an election happened, which, there is an election happening. You have the riding of Terrebonne, which Liberals won, in quotations, by one vote, because in reality, Liberals probably lost it. These a lot of postal votes, which would have broken for the bloc, were excluded due to Elections Canada incompetence. Um, I just realized I wasn't sharing my screen for that. It's riding in Terrebonne here. This is new. I haven't recorded on this computer before. But you had a relatively close seat projection. Block at 31 is pretty good compared to the 22 that they're polling for now. And the CPC was close. Liberals were projecting in a minority, but the CPC was in the running there. Um, what was happening is the CPC was doing very well. British Columbia actually was a highlight because British Columbia have a lot of close ridings here, so the CPC was polling well there. And then, of course, Ontario. You had places like Eglinton Lawrence narrowing up. Hamilton, they were doing a bit better in. Brampton, which Brampton is going to be big the next election. You have a lot of very, very close seats there, about 2% either way. Um, you know, that if conservatives are going to want any hope of winning nationwide, they're going to have to do very well in Brampton, which they probably will, to be honest. My idea is that you're seeing this surge. This is based off the Davos speech Carney made. That's where you really saw the liberals go up. And like, they are still going up, and you have seen, where you might think it levels off before. You know, the CPC had a good week in the middle of February, and then it got worse. But I do think you're seeing it begin to level off. The Carney momentum is beginning to fade away, and I think that you're going to see the liberals go down a little bit. They're still going to be polling firmly ahead, but Carney is going to get a majority by the skin of his teeth. You're going to have right now the House of Commons is at 170 because you have two by-elections. I think one, two, if I'm not mistaken. Correct me if I'm wrong. Waiting to happen, and you also have Terrebonne. So, with four crossings, Carney should have 173 seats, but you have three Liberal seats waiting. The two in Toronto are safe Liberal. You know, it's going to be the Liberals are going to blow out the Conservatives there. The NDP could log a good performance. To be fair, they are pulling ahead of their 2025 result, even though like 8% is not impressive at all. They should be higher. And with Lewis, there is a chance that they go lower. But there there's a scenario in which the NDP plays second in the by-election. I can pull up the map and the projection. I can be semi-intelligent. So you have the first one is University of Rosedale. This is vacant because um, what's her name? The former deputy prime minister under Trudeau, whose name I am not Christina Freeland resigned because she wanted to take a job, or I think a job in the private sector, or she was offered head at a university or something. It's stepping stones down because after she lost the leadership race for 2025, she really shouldn't have run again. There's no use in running again. But I mean, I guess they didn't want a nomination contest that close to the election. And they want a Scarborough Southwest. That MP also resigned or he resigned to take an ambassadorship. He was being forced out by Carney. So Scarborough Southwest, the NDP is not polling close whatsoever. University of Rosedale, they could get second. They probably do want to get second there. And then you have another by-election that probably comes up soon. Beaches East York. Nathaniel Erskine Smith is going. Erskine? I'm not sure. Is going to resign probably soon to run for provincial leader of the provincial Liberal Party. And he's going to have to resign to do that because he also wants to get a seat in provincial parliament. So there is one weird poll that came out of here. I don't know if 338 Canada factored it in. Um, Evidently, they didn't. But it showed that the seat is liberal leaning. Not too liberal leaning. From Main Street, I think it was like 45% of the seat was voting liberal, 30% NDP or something. But if Avi Lewis, who was just elected NDP leader, ran in this seat, which would be like the earliest by-election for him to run in, because he does want to run in a by-election to get a seat in Parliament. That is one thing you do want your leader to have a seat in Parliament. Like had Mark Carney become leader in like 2023 rather than like right before the election 2025, he would have at least forced out an MP for a by-election or call an election altogether to get himself into Parliament. So Avi Lewis is going to be looking for an opening to get into Parliament, but that poll showed him up in Beaches East York over a generic Liberal, which is batshit. That's not at all happening, but it was a relatively decent performance for the NDP. And if that were to happen, that would put Liberals at 172 seats, assuming they win the Terrebonne by-election, which they seem favored to. Right now, they're polling ahead by two for it because this result was vacated after Liberals won by one vote. But like I said, there was a lot of confusion around there, so the result was vacated about a year after the first election, a little bit under, on a by election was called. So for the longest time, the Bloc was polling to win the seat easily, and they were expected to. Around here, um, this is where the by election is called, early January or mid to early January. Um, but the bloc collapses immediately after it because you have this general theme of nationalism within Canadian politics a lot now, due to the jokes Trump has made about annexing Canada. And the bloc, as a separatist party, doesn't really do good when nationalism is in the forefront. There's a reason why you saw the bloc go from polling to win this riding. By a little bit of a high margin, 50 to 17. Winning safe Liberal seats in Montreal to polling to lose the riding and eventually ending up losing the riding in the final count. You know, the general theme of nationalism. People don't want to vote for separatist party when they see Trump as a threat to Canadian sovereignty. There's the idea of stand united. There's a reason why the bloc surged, especially during the Trudeau era, because people weren't very happy with the federal government. People were angry at the Liberals, and they thought that regional nationalism, was the way to go. This is why also you're seeing provincial parties that are affiliated with the Bloc Québécois do better, while the Bloc itself isn't doing well. People are much more likely to vote for a party that might lean a bit towards separatism on the provincial level than on the national level, because the national level is most important to form a united front against Trump. So that by election is coming up. I don't really know how it goes. I would expect it to go block, even in spite of this polling, just because it was so narrow. And I just don't see it. I think that you're seeing a serious polling miss, and that liberals are much more enthused um, than non-liberals as a whole. And I think that's just, I think that's false. I think that's just based off of the fact that after the Davos speech, it's much easier to be a liberal. It's much easier to swim with the tide than against it, and you had a lot of momentum for liberals after that. It took a while for the conservatives to get like the momentum on their side to narrow the overall polling. And you've seen this before. The liberals have skyrocketed. I mean, hell, look at what happened here. You know, Liberals skyrocketed, and they went into 2025. Like a 6% polling lead. It didn't really. It narrowed a little bit. You know, but you saw at best for the conservatives a 4-point national environment. It was more like 5, 6 for a lot of the election, and then it ended up being a 2-point win. And that was with the Liberals at their most. Or that was with both sides at their most energized. Conservatives aren't energized. Conservatives are very disillusioned. They lost. They've lost a lot. The last time conservatives won an election was 2011, 15 years ago. So conservatives are very disillusioned. But I think you saw stuff like Pierre went on Joe Rogan. I think that helps them. I think that's going to make people much more excited to vote conservative, or conservative specifically. And I think that also you're going to see these cracks in Carney. Like I still maybe erroneously think that the Terrebonne by-election is going to go block. And what that's going to show people is that the polls nationally are wrong, um, that there is some momentum behind the anti-liberal campaigns, and that a lot of these projections are overestimating the liberals. And what you're going to see is that polling is going to swing against liberals again, or what will happen is the liberals will win it, and they'll win it, probably not by 1 point, probably by like 4 or so. And then you're going to see the opposite because people are going to think, oh, shit, wow, we are underestimating liberal support, and liberals are going to be polling at 250 seats. So I think it's very important, but I would give the edge to the bloc as of now, because I think the bloc is getting things back together. And I think by the time of that by-election, the whole theme of nationalism against Trump is going to recede a little bit, or maybe Trump will make another joke about destroying Canada, and who knows? Maybe Mark Carney's paying him to do this shit. But I mean, I think it's very important for the conservatives that you have some shift against Carney, and that's what Pierre going on Joe Rogan is meant to do. It's meant to have like a vibe shift um, against Carney because like it is you know a lot of it is vibes. The government only surged so much in approval because there was a threat posed that made people who support the government much more likely to respond to polling. Um, like the Carney government has always been approved of, but like I don't really believe it's approved of by 30. If we go to federal polls by region, um, Alberta actually I wanted government approval by region. I don't like that. But the government is approved of in Alberta by like 10 points. I don't buy that. I don't really buy that. To be honest, I buy this. I buy the shift towards cardio. I don't buy another shift afterwards. So I think you're going to see. Avi Lewis was pretty decisive, and I think this is going to hurt the liberals because where are you going to see Avi Lewis surge? It's not going to be in working class areas, and I think these working class voters are much more likely to break conservative than liberal, as we have seen before. Where is Avi Lewis going to surge in Toronto? If Avi Lewis is going to put seats on the map, these are going to be these seats that nearly won NDP in 2021, but didn't. More liberal leaning seats. Even Jenny Kwan probably polls to win. I think you're going to see a slight shift in support to the NDP, like a post leadership raise bump, kind of like what you saw with the Liberals in 2025, because people are going to be energized to support the NDP unless Avi Lewis crashes and burns immediately, which can't be ruled out. But, they're going to take the lead in some of these seats. The problem is the NDP is going to collapse, coastal British Columbia. Like, Gord Johns, honestly, probably is the biggest loser from this leadership result. He's in a pretty tough spot in Courtney Alberni. He's got to convince people, one, that the Liberals can't win, which now projections are showing that that's not the case. And he's got to convince a group of people who really aren't the same as the NDP voter in an inner city to support him, and I think he's going to have a lot of trouble doing that. I think if you see a silver lining for conservatives, I do think that there will be some people who are liberal who are open to voting NDP just because of fatigue. Carney isn't perfect, and as Trump exits the national spotlight, Carney, he hasn't governed, as a full-on leftist. He's governed as a center-left prime minister. There's going to be a lot of people disconcerted with that when the immediate threat of Trump leaves the public eye. And who knows? Trump is obviously going to be president until 2029. He's still going to blabber on like a retard about, annexing Canada. You don't know. It's always going to be a threat for the conservatives. And the conservatives have shown at this point, Pierre has shown at this point that he will pose an ineffective um, response to anything that Trump does. But you have a shot as the conservatives. This should be the low point, and Carney is starting to, have some chinks in his armor. You know, Carney can't be everything that everyone wants him to be. Um, his approval is at a high point, and at the high point, it's probably only going to go down from here. This is the high point forever. With Carney, obviously we've seen it before. It could just keep going up, and that's a distinct possibility. But I don't see it. I think the general idea of what comes up must go down. Um, you know, you're going to see. You're going to see the momentum that Carney has stopped. And who knows what it will be? It could be Tarabon, could be Avi Lewis, it could be anything. He could like say something stupid with Trump. It could even be happening already. We don't have any like massive polls from after the Pierre Joe Rogan interview. It could be that. So we don't know as of yet, but we do kind of just have to wait and see. Another thing I figured I should mention. I found interesting is that after you had the leadership of Avi Lewis confirmed, the Alberta NDP has rejected all ties to Avi Lewis, even though they have Sika as their leader. Why? It probably would help them in Edmonton. Edmonton Strathcona, Naheed Nenji, their leader. I'm sure he'd do great with that. But the problem is the Alberta NDP, if they want to win, they have to win Calgary. They have to win a lot of these more rural areas in Calgary or exurban um, areas in Calgary, and that's just not happening if they tie themselves to the federal NDP, which probably will get like 7% in Alberta. Nothing great. And Saskatchewan also. So you could see a big shakeup in which the Alberta NDP is considering renaming itself. So I found that interesting. But, anyways, thank you for watching. Subscribe. I'm back. Back from what? I can't say because it would violate YouTube terms of service. But, stick around. Bye bye.